Good evening and welcome to the Modise Network.
Tonight on the Modise Network, the lead investigator of the VBS Bank heist explains how more than 22,000 depositors were robbed by a band of elites. Later on, prominent business leader Bernard Swanepoel talks about the mining sector's contribution to the country's economic growth.
The looting of 2 billion rands at the VBS Bank is regarded as the biggest heist of all time. The lead investigator, Terry Mutau, has revealed some of the names of the individuals who looted the savings of mostly poor villagers in Limpopo and municipalities that were in on the scam. Suspicions about the bank's operating procedures and liquidity have been a subject of discussion for some time, especially when President Jacob Zuma revealed he had received an 8 million rands loan from the bank. The Reserve Bank announced it is placing the bank under administration and started investigations, sparking a debate in Parliament that degenerated to economic freedom fighters Deputy President Floyd Shivambu personally attacking the Treasury Deputy Director General Ismail Momoniat. This looting has shocked a lot of people, not only because of the scale in the tightly monitored banking environment, but because of the personalities involved and the fact that it was being hailed as an example of black business initiative. Now the dream is in tatters, the fallout is political, and the embarrassment is global. To tell us more about this investigation, the report, and the methodology that was adopted is the lead investigator, Advocate Terry Mutau, who is with me here, and we invite you to be part of our conversation by joining us on Twitter using the hashtag the Modise Network. Well, Advocate, pleasure to have you with us on the show. We appreciate it.
Good evening, and
How
thanks
long,
for having me.
How long have you been working on this investigation?
We took a period of about 5 months.
5 months.
Yes.
And you came up, of course, I have the report here in front of me, and I've gone through it, seen parts of what you came up with. But at the end of it all, when you were doing the interviews, collating information, cross-checking this and that, you compile it, and then you present it. How did you feel at the end of all of this, given what you were exposed to? I know in the intro you refer to Mr. Nightingale, for instance, the bank heist of 40 years ago, and that those who were involved worked hard as much as they were never arrested. But in this case, they did not really put in physical work into the heist, but did other things. But how did you feel about it, ultimately?
It is for me the most embarrassing encounter, particularly when it was hailed as a black business initiative. And given the history of our country, where we come from, and the importance of affording black people opportunities to, of course, redress the past imbalances. And when those who use that narrative commenced their ulterior motives through a fictitious deposit purporting to acquire a majority shareholding within the bank, when in fact and in truth they did not acquire that stake. And that should tell you that the motives were not innocent from the outset.
So from your investigations and findings, you conclude that it was deliberate anyway to firstly hijack the bank, and then flowing from there, then get the scheme going where money was distributed around.
From the evidence that was presented, both oral evidence and documentary evidence, I came to that inescapable conclusion. That was the agenda.
I think like many other people who might have said this to you, that we think, I do, that you are a brave, courageous person, and we must compliment you for the work that has been done. Obviously, the recommendations are still to be carried out, and some of the evidence that's here is still to be tested. But to come up with a report of this nature is something very significant, especially when the nation is facing such massive acts of corruption throughout our society.
If I may just give a subjective view of this, I find it most troubling that a person who tells it like it is, which is supposed to be human nature,
Yes.
should be viewed as having performed something heroic. And I do not think I did that. This should be the norm. I mean, if you see somebody jumping into a neighbor's house and stealing something, you know that that is wrong. You should do the right thing by telling on that person. And you should not expect any compliments from it, because that's what should be expected of us.
I agree. But in recent times, Terry, please advocate, agree with me. I'm not saying that we should agree that things must be done the wrong way around. Unfortunately, this is what is going on in our society, isn't it?
No, well, I understand the perspective that you're coming from, and I think part of leading the nation and society is to be courageous and stand up and do the right thing, and with the hope that our transforming society will restore its ethos, its values, and its commitment to our constitution, which is what we fought for, after all.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree. And of course, in recent times, there's been detachment from the reality that we face, and people will claim, look, I'm just a clinical professional. I deal with the facts, and I'm detached from what is right or wrong. It's not my place to feel this way or that way. Frankly, I was actually taking a chance asking you how you feel about this, because I've interviewed a few professionals who would say, hey, it's not about how I feel, it's about what is contained in the report. But having said that, again, you might be accused of having been subjective in arriving at your conclusions when you compiled this report.
You are correct. I mean, that accusation has already been made by some of the people that are affected by the findings. But I would urge people to, in my view, perhaps just to give it a bit of context. I mean, I've identified people who fall into different categories who comment about the report. You have people who comment without having read the report at all, who hear what purports to be the narrative from the others, and they take it from there. You have people who've just read parts of the report, and perhaps because those are the ones that they feel affect them. And you have people that I call the third category, the people who read the report just to complete it. And you have the fourth category, which is where, in my view, we should all be gravitating towards. And those are people who read the report for purpose of understanding it. And if people have read the report and their purpose is to understand, firstly, what is the objective of the report, on what objective material were conclusions or findings made and the recommendations made, I have no doubt that the majority of us will agree with what is contained in the report.
But here's the point, though. When we place money with the banks and the overall financial system, we do so on the basis of trust, thinking that there is probity there, that your money will be well looked after. The people who run these things are professionals. They will be prudent in the management of the systems, and that next time when you come back, you'll find your money having been used constructively to any interest, or at least will have been kept safe throughout. But we call it a heist. We're talking not about stealing from the bank a portion, but the overall bank itself being a heist. Is that a correct characterization of this?
It is. And perhaps it also gives context to the question you asked me earlier. I do not know any of the entities that are involved here. I do not know the role players in any way. I have no interest in being biased against any entity or any individual, particularly as a lawyer. I mean, I'm quite aware of the standards to which reports of this nature following an investigation are held and are tested. What material, direct or indirect interest would I have in the outcome going either way? Because I am consciously aware that those that are affected have a right to ventilate their rights. And that will be adjudged against a legal test. And if none of our tenets of the rule of law have been followed, I mean, it puts everything that has happened into disarray.
Now, everything that seemingly went wrong within VBS happened within a short period of time.
Yes.
Am I correct?
Yes, that would be between 2016 and 2018,
Well,
in the main.
Yes, in the main. But
Yes.
you know, everything that we're talking about happened within less than 24 months, so to speak.
Correct, yes.
Yeah. So now, and then the main actor here is who is the chairman of the bank.
Yes.
Mr.
On what? Yes, on what we found.
On what Mr. Chifiwa Modise, right? You
Yes.
mentioned him by name. And
Yes.
going through the report, I noticed you did not speak to him. So question is why? Even though you arrive at the conclusion that he seemingly at a personal level was the main beneficiary.
There are a number of factors that I took into consideration. Well, the one is Mr. Modise decided to go on a media campaign to protest his innocence. That's one. Secondly, when there were sequestration and liquidation proceedings that were instituted by the curator, who was not involved in this process, though Mr. Modise did not oppose it, he took a view that he was going to file an explanatory affidavit. And I had the benefit of that coupled with the other interactions. And I realized that it would serve no purpose at all, because the material that is there is clear. There are emails, for example, that come from him, which contains a spreadsheet with instructions that are clear, and those instructions were executed. The flow of funds is clear, that funds did flow into those entities pursuant to his instruction. His hands, and perhaps just to explain that slightly. There are people who came and gave evidence under oath, others gave affidavits, who say, I participated in the scheme, this is what I did, here's proof, here's an email that contains this instruction, others I was given verbally, and you can connect everything. So it doesn't assist the process in any way, given the fact that these are mere findings and recommendations, as you correctly put it earlier. They must still be tested. Mr. Modise is going to have an opportunity to be confronted with the allegations, which is what one hopes for, that the law enforcement officers and the prosecutorial authorities will endorse the recommendations and do what is right. And he will have his opportunity. He hasn't been judged. There is no predetermination. It's a constitutional state. His side of the story will be heard. But he suffers no prejudice whatsoever through not having participated in this process when he's already told a narrative.
And how much, by the way, did he benefit from all of this?
Well, I can't recall. I think it's about 328 million.
325, I think.
325.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't recall because I don't have a copy of the report in front of me, but yeah. I remember ballpark figure.
Okay. All right, we will continue this conversation with the lead investigator into the VBS Bank heist. And Mr. Terry Mutau is my guest. We'll be looking at the report, its findings, and the way they went about conducting these investigations and the recommendations that will come out of this report. Please join us in a short while.